market looks so good. Too bad it'll have to wait for another good day.
I'm from Tremont Island, a quiet little place where I lived with my parents and sister. Things were good, except my sister was suffering from a terrible condition. We couldn't treat her on Tremont, so she was forced to travel to another island, all on her own. Back then, skyfaring wasn't nearly the safe bet that it is today, so I wasn't sure if she'd even make it there, let alone receive treatment. I loved my sister more than anything, so waving bye to her as she took off toward an unknown future was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I hoped beyond all hope. I hoped till it hurt, that her cure would be swift, and she'd sail back to me with each setting sun. But the days, they grew into months. Sometime after she left, a brutal pandemic spread across Tremont, crippling our population in a matter of days. I was shocked, watching the good people I'd known all my life pass away. But I was horrified when it claimed my parents. And when it came for me, I knew death was waiting at the front door. What can I do? I thought, lungs heavy and weighing me to my bed. What could I do but turn to the skies and pray? Please, if you're listening, I want to hear my family. I want to hear their voices again. My pleas were answered, but not by salvation. No, it was Celeste, the primal beast of death, who descended from the heavens. She stole death from the suffering islanders, preventing them from slipping into the afterlife. They became zombies, sentient and rotting. Unlike the others, my corporeal form faded away, leaving my spirit to haunt the land. This, at least, gave me a faint hope. If I was given an unlife, then perhaps my mother and father would be given the same gift. But the months, they grew into years. And it became clear that though Celeste held dominion over death, life was a more complicated matter. It was my wish that had brought unlife to Tremont. I was to blame for turning my hometown into a living cemetery. If the villagers knew what I had done, well, that's why I chose to haunt the manor on the outskirts of town. Alone in those halls, with no one to talk to, I counted the days until I lost track of time. Solitude was better than guilt. Isolation was better than hearing my name used as a curse. But with time, the silence ate away at my name, until even I forgot who I was. It's true that there weren't people around the manor, but I did discover a few ghost animals floating about. They took a liking to me, probably because of our shared ghosthood, and I gave them cute names to show my affection. Beppo, Gigi, Fuji, and Nicola. Before I knew it, my lonesome days became a little less gray, if not less repetitive. I watched so many tomorrows and yesterdays pass me by. I felt as stale and constant as the mists that covered the island. That all changed when the crew came to my manor. They were a cheerful, lively group, but also straightforward and intimidating. It had been so long since I needed to interact with other people. I knew that if I made contact, I would have to acknowledge the real depth of my loneliness. So I ran, and they gave chase. So I ran again, and they followed once more. No matter where I fled, they found me, undeterred by my spectral form or my ghostly pets. Finally, I decided to ask them about their situation. Thanks to the mists, they explained, their airship was grounded on Tremont. Like me, like the other islanders. We were all prisoners of Celeste. So long as she still had a pact with the island, there would be no refuge from her fog. But, by the same token, her powers preserved the unlives of Tremont's people, myself included. If Celeste was brought down, we would fade with her. It troubled me, but I knew it was a necessary course of action. I had only one thing to accomplish before confronting the primal beast of death. I needed to come clean to the islanders. It was time to make amends. Had it not been for the arrival of the captain and the crew, I would never have found the strength to make that decision. I marched straight to the village, took a deep breath, and explained to the people how I doomed everyone. But to my surprise, they looked upon me with sympathy and warmth. With the understanding and support of the islanders, I called Celeste once again. But she didn't appear, and the mist still covered the island. That's how I learned the truth. It wasn't only me who had crossed Celeste's fate with our own. The other culprit was the doctor who was traveling through our village, back when the pandemic first appeared. He was secretly conducting research to summon Celeste. We hurried to the place where he resided, but when we arrived, we found that his consciousness had already been swallowed by the primal beast of death, and he couldn't cough up any helpful information. Despite the setback, I joined with the crew and the islanders to find and defeat Celeste. The mists parted, and the island returned to its former state. Its residents began to pass into the great beyond, disappearing into light. Before long, everyone I'd known had been lifted into the bright sky, leaving behind only their memories. I closed my eyes and waited for my final moments. But no matter how long I waited, I never began to fade. Left behind, yet again. I stared out at the village, devoid of residents. I was alone, but I could accept that. At any rate, the nameless ghost was no more, because a strange man gave me an oddly familiar name. So long as I had that name, and my memories with the crew, I could wait decades, maybe even centuries, for my sister to return. I think the captain, however, couldn't bear leaving me to such a hollow fate, and invited me to the crew. But how could I leave the island? I knew that my little sister would come back to me. Even though we were no more than graves and warm thoughts, this is where her family was laid to rest. If she came back and no one was waiting, wouldn't she be sad? That's why I knew I had to stay. But the captain wouldn't hear of it. If I was worried about my sister, I should go look for her. It was a new chance. I had never been off my island. I had never even considered the option. But I knew I could. I just needed to find the courage. And that's how I set out on a journey with the crew. Somewhere, out there in that big blue sky, my sister is waiting for me. One day, I was out shopping in Seed Hollow Central Plaza when I saw a woman with kind eyes sitting on a bench. She was absorbed in her needlepoint. Your embroidery is beautiful.
Oh, aren't you a dear? Thank you.
Her smile was genuine and cozy, just like the blanket she was working on. She told me it was a present for her beloved. I've never seen anyone so outside before. She giggled. Really? I'm hoping some of this cheerful sunlight works its way into the fiber. Her name was Malfira, and she invited me to have a seat beside her. Admittedly, the weather was beautiful, the kind that made you appreciate being alive. Or, well, unalive. There was a long, thin trail of white dividing the sky, the aftermath of an unfortunate cloud that had been pierced by a wayfaring airship. How fragile those clouds. How fragile our journeys. I glanced back at Malfira, who looked to be making diligent progress. A familiar memory crept to mind, of a time when I begged my mother to sew new stuffed animals for me and my sister. The nostalgia was comfortable, welcomed even, but I was brought back to the present when I heard a troubled sigh from beside me.
My dream is to become a hero. I know, kind of stupid, right? I get that you can't just snap your fingers and poof, you're in a cape with your first initial plastered over your chest. But let's face it, the world we live in could really use some heroes. It's like every day I come across some new sad story. Where's the harm in wishing for more sunshine? Anyways, I know heroes really do exist. I was saved by one. Well, saved might be an exaggeration, but I was a timid little squirt, and he was always there for me. He was just so darn cool. I wanted to be brave like him. I wanted to protect people like him. Eventually, my hero left our hometown to become a knight. If I was going to follow in his footsteps, then that meant I needed to take up the old helm and armor too. Wasn't sure if a weak crybaby like me would ever amount to much. But hey, whoever changed the future by getting hung up on the past? You probably already figured this out, but this hero I've been talking about? None other than my childhood friend, Lancy. And let me tell you, he's like something out of a fairy tale. Brave, smart, strong. Back in the day, all the grown-ups would call him a prodigy. If it wasn't for him, I might have never become the shining knight of Fiendrock that I am today. But man, I still have a long way to go. I won't stop until I'm the best me I could possibly be. Here's a story from way before I became vice captain of the White Dragons. One day, I was waiting for Lancy at a harbor in Fiendrock. When hours passed and he still didn't show, I started to get nervous. The sound of the surf, which had been super calming until then, turned dark and whispery. Weird, but okay. Snooping around, I found out the true dragon Fafnir had returned. The royal powers that be were putting together a force to beat him. And of course, the person leading it was the captain of the White Dragons, Lancy. My best friend was about to march into the jaws of a literal fire-breathing lizard, and he was gonna do it without me. I couldn't let that happen. In a panic, I started back for the capital. So there I was, rushing along, worried half out of my mind, when I met the Grand Cypher's captain for the first time. Apparently, the crew was also headed for the capital of Fiendrock, so I told him to stick with me. More the merrier, right? Except, I wasn't exactly merry. And the captain could see that. Unable to stand it any longer, I spilled my heart out. I talked about the divide between me and Lancy. About how all I ever wanted was to be there for him. On and off the battlefield. But for every baby step forward I took, Lancy soared. I was weaker than him, ranked lower than him. I wasn't enough. And this whole Fafnir business had just driven everything home. Everyone had immediately gone to Lancy, asking him to lead the way, save the day. On the other hand, I didn't get so much as a backwards glance, so I was just some random foot soldier. But I didn't get to whine when my best friend was out there risking his life. I needed to stop feeling sorry for myself and put in the work so I could start feeling proud instead. Lancy's a born fighter and a genius. He's also human. The pressure on him is crushing. I had to get strong enough to support him. Hearing this, the captain asked if I wanted to join the crew. Of course, I would never quit the White Dragons, but maybe a temporary change in direction was what I needed. I'd run myself into a rut. New scenery, fresh perspective, all part of a healthy breakfast for a growing boy like me. So I took the offer, determined to go back to the White Dragons bigger and better than ever. But I digress. Back to the Fafnir. All you really need to know is, it's spiraled way out of control. The fate of the kingdom hangs in the balance kind of stuff. Thanks to Lancy and the captain, Fiendrock managed to find its way back to normalcy. Me? I've been changed forever. Though we'd been fighting a dragon, I ended up learning a lot about people. Their strengths, weaknesses, scared us, made us tick. Had some people pass out of my life and others come into it. My eyes were open to a lot of things, and not all of it pretty. But I'll take it, because it's the sum of our experiences, the good and the bad, that make us who we are. Fast forward in time, and bam! Your boy Vayne's vice captain of the White Dragons. Took big dreaming, a lot of hard work, and a hefty helping of best friend anxiety, but I got there. Now, don't get me wrong, rank, titles, all that stuff's just words, you know? What kid doesn't like getting a gold star? And this was a big, shiny gold star that said, "Congratulations, you're on your way to becoming a hero." Plus, now I got to be part of all the important security meetings. If Lancy needed help, I'd be the first to know. For once, I was feeling pretty confident in myself. Vice captains have it tough, but I was more than happy to do the work. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. After a few months, some nasty rumors began circulating through the barracks. People were saying I got my job through nepotism, just because I was friends with Lancy. It was kind of a dark time. I've been trying to come up with things that I accomplished when I realized there were none. At least, nothing that I'd accomplished on my own. This whole time, I'd just been riding on other people's coattails. The captain, as always, lent me a shoulder to cry on, and we agreed to meet up again in a few days. But when the time came, two, burlier figures were standing beside the captain, Siegfried and Percival. They were there to spar with me and judge, once and for all, if I deserved to be vice captain of the White Dragons. I definitely teared up a little. These were two of the people I looked up to most in the world. They could take whatever I threw at them. my hopes, my insecurities, lessons I learned. I put everything I had into that battle. And in return, Siegfried and Percival gave me everything they had. Fighting the two of them was as intense as you'd expect. But once I got over my throbbing calves and aching deltoids, I felt really lucky. I had good people looking out for me. They showed me how far I'd come. I could go the distance. I went back to the castle determined to hide everything from Lancey. He had enough on his plate. But you know how best friends are. Trying to keep secrets from them is like trying to hide an onion in a muffin. He cornered me. So, with nowhere left to run, I spilled the beans. Told him how the rumors had drained my confidence, and I didn't feel good enough to be his vice captain. Or his best bud. I felt horrible. I had the greatest friends in the skies telling me they believed in me. And still, I couldn't believe in myself. Lancey waited for me to get everything off my chest before speaking.
Vayne, I recommended you for vice captain because I considered you the most qualified. The motion passed because the king and the white dragons felt the same way.
And just like that, a weight was lifted. Seems like all I really needed was to know my best friend trusted me. And now that we re-established this trust, there was only one thing left to do. Beat each other silly. We snuck out to the training grounds in the middle of the night and sparred until our legs gave out. Then, we lay spread eagle on the ground, looking up at the stars. Those little twinkling dots were so inspiring. They're out there, a billion miles away. And still, their light manages to reach us. My dream of becoming a hero might be far off. But if the stars can make the trip, so can I. So this next adventure began on a day in Zegagrande like any other. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and I was soaking up some rays after a pleasant morning of grocery shopping. That's when I heard it.
Long live the Blue Sky Knights!
Yes, the fierce cry of a child in its natural habitat. Enough to strike fear into the heart of any warrior.
I've never seen you around here. Intruder alert! Intruder alert! Knights, assemble! Cannonball formation!
They came hurtling at me, faster than the wind. I stood no chance.
We're the Blue Sky Knights, servers of justice and roasters of villains. Who goes there?
But all jokes aside, these tykes were adorable. Reminded me of my own days playing Knights and Dragons. With both hands in the air, I thought long and hard about how to respond. I for sure didn't want to pull out my usual, I'm Vayne, Vice Captain of the White Dragons. I mean, capturing a real knight while playing make-believe could be an awkward sitch for the kids. But it also wouldn't be right to lie. Then, a candle lit up over my head. I'm Vayne, the wayfaring chef.
Wait, you're a chef? That means you're an expert at brewing stews and baking pastries, correct?
I blinked. Hadn't expected such an energetic response. What? Oh yeah, and I've got the proof right here. I pulled out a bag of cookies, which may or may not have been meant for Vyrn and Lyria, but they'd understand, right? I'll bake them some more. Anyways, passed out the cookies, and in the space of a few bites, the tots were leaping around like it was their birthday. And yes, before you say anything, I do realize that bribing the future defenders of our sky with munchies might not have been the best for character building. But you should have seen their smiles.
You have some potential, Sir Chef. I'll let you cook for us as our square. I'm Skip, by the way, captain of the Blue Sky Knights.
We were on to headhunting already? These kids didn't mess around. I'm honored, Captain Skip. But to tell the truth, I'm kind of busy right now. Oh no. They were hitting me with the pout of despair and the eyes of the puppy dog. I bit my lip. This little game wouldn't take too long, right? Still, it has always been my dream to cook for the Blue Sky Knights. Squire Vane, at your service. I just didn't have it in me to rain on their parade. After dubbing me in a formal ceremony, Captain Skip raised his tiny fist in the air.
We got our chef. Next, we have to search for a base. Split up, soldiers. We meet back here in 1 hour.
The rest of the kids responded with a rousing cheer. And then, they were off.
Hey, Sir Chef, that means you too.
I saluted. Couldn't disobey direct orders from a commanding officer. Anyways, I still had time to spare. I was gonna find these kids the coolest base ever. Yeah! They won't know what hit them! Captain said there's some good spots around here. Just gotta make sure they're safe. Whoops! Looks like this place is already occupied. Feel the storm! Done invested. Now, let's look for safer real estate. More monsters. This is definitely not a kid-friendly joint. Monster territory. Man, Clancy and I used to love exploring the woods. It's a party up in here. But it looks like I wasn't invited. Like a hurricane! And now that that's over, back to the search. Spacious, but a dead end like this could be dangerous. Nah, no cliffs. Shady and secure is good, but hard pass on the claustrophobia. monsters, perfect size and location? Wait, I think I see a path on the other side of that thicket. I bet it leads to Folka. Captain Skip! I think I found it! I led the kids to a sweet glade I discovered in the woods. It was right next to a big thoroughfare, so they wouldn't have to worry about monsters or getting lost. I mean, if I could find my way back, then anyone could. Still, the place was surrounded by some nifty bushes and trees that shaded it from prying eyes. All in all, I think I did pretty well. And, judging from all the frolicking going on, the Tykes agreed. Captain Skip pulled out a handmade flag that he'd apparently just been carrying around and stuck it in the ground.
This land is now the hideout of the Blue Sky Knights!
And sure, the thought, technically knights don't have hideouts, flashed into my mind, but you can't expect kids to know that. Actually, you know what? These Tykes might be onto something. Maybe I should ask Lancey for our own secret base later. Anyway, for the time being, I was in what had to be one of the top 10 hideouts in all the skies. I found a nice, plush patch of moss and plopped down. It was a good day.
The fruit in the market looks so good. Too bad it'll have to wait for another day.
Yeah. Who knows when we'll find the time to kick back and relax.